Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Samaniego here, along with Amanda Kaufman, Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, Ben Schneider. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat room. We'll be discussing all the racing action from this past weekend with Formula 1, IndyCar, MotoGP, and the Repco Supercar Series. A big thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark, Robin, and David, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. You too can invest in us. Help us get to $500 a month. We could be at the track more frequently, bringing you more coverage. And the folks that buy us a coffee, especially the ones that buy us multiple coffees, link in the video description to both. And if you're watching on YouTube or anywhere, check out our YouTube channel, Grid Network. Hit the bell icon, subscribe. Don't miss any of our programs, because one of the big programming note, the NASCAR Cup Series race at Dover, Delaware, that has been postponed to Monday, tomorrow, noon Eastern. So we'll have to recap Monday evening. Ben and Brandon, they'll be recapping that along with all the usual races in Grid Encore. So overall, we encourage everyone to be sure to not miss any of our programs this week. We'll be having Joshua joining us shortly as well, too. So one of the big things, of course, with Joshua joining us right now, actually, is we have Formula One. They didn't exactly kick off the weekend, but they did kick off the day with the first race. It was very early, 4 a.m. for me here at the West Coast. Ben, how did everything turn out in Baku? Was it the kind of crazy race we anticipated?
Well, you never know with this place, because I still remember the first year everybody complained about how boring it was, and then the next year we got one of the most chaotic races of the season, and that's kind of the reputation that this circuit has earned over the first several years we've been going here. But the Azerbaijan Grand Prix looked to potentially be set off to be another chaotic race with a safety car on lap 11 for Nick de Vries. This came right after Max Verstappen had come into the pits, so the bad timing put him third for the restart behind his teammates Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Verstappen got around Leclerc but had nothing for Perez, who led a Red Bull 1-2. Red Bull has won every race this season with the two drivers equal in terms of wins. Verstappen is 4 for 4 with podiums, 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Perez has 3 podiums and a 5th place finish. Amanda, we'll start with you first. Will this truly be a Red Bull battle for the championship? Can Checo hang on to Max's pace?
Well, I think it's certainly shaking out that way to turn out to be a Red Bull battle for the championship. I think that Checo has been right there all season with Max, and I think that he certainly has experience under his belt to match Max on pace and really hold his own like he did today, and proved that in today's race. So I think that Max isn't going to drive away with this championship anytime soon. I think that Perez is a real contender here, and I know that he said himself that he wants it as badly as anyone could imagine. So I think so.
Absolutely. I think we've got an unusual situation going on where for the first time since Mercedes did as well back in 2016. So it's now actually quite a long time ago, really. We've got this teammate battle growing, and it is between a two-time champion and Sergio Perez as well. So we're in for a very interesting season, and they've sort of been 1 for 1. Verstappen won round 1 and round 3, Perez won round 2 and round 4, and still the king of the street circuits as well. So I think in the end, I think Verstappen is still going to control it. He's still going to win it. And I think Perez is going to give him a very hard run until the end of it all. But we're in for such a classic teammate season. It might just make up for the fact that everything else was a bit dull as well. But there is a couple of things coming about the ranting that I've got to do that I warned everyone about both Formula 1 and MotoGP today. IndyCar, the only one getting away with it. Also, I didn't realise I'm more out of breath running back up the stairs to where this green screen is than I am running outside to the commentary box. So I've had a right day of it commentating, and I've got a horrible cough, so I apologise if it catches me out at some point in the broadcast.
Well, Josh, real quick, before we move on to Ferrari, I know there was a lot of talk regarding Max Verstappen's attitude following the sprint race and that little clash that he had with George Russell. Do you think if that kind of attitude continues for Max over the course of the season, that could play a factor in helping keep Sergio in the championship fight and preventing Max from pulling away?
Yeah, I think Max's hothead attitude, which has been with him since he joined Formula One, has sort of grown. It's sort of become like there's two sides to Max Verstappen. There's the side that we see him on Twitch with all his friends playing with computer games, and his stepdaughter Penelope comes up as well, and they all have fun. And then there's this side of him on the track, which is sort of like a spoiled rich kid, entitled. His ego has grown with the team, and in many respects that's why I think he's great being at Red Bull, because it's a very egotistical team, Red Bull, and Max has sort of grown with it. And I think there's a worry that if that ego is not kept in check by anyone, it's going to start bleeding out, and that's what's happened this weekend. I mean, Russell, I've seen many people on Twitter, even Richie, who I commentate with as well. Richie said himself it was Russell's fault for crashing in the sprint race. My personal viewpoint was it was the opening up of the race. Russell was on the inside. He was entitled to space. There was a wall next to Russell. Verstappen had ample room of space around the outside. He could have lifted it off. Yes, in the end, Russell sort of forced his way so he had room, but Russell himself had to force Max off the track to get himself a bit of room. Max closed the door coming into turn 3. So it was a bit of a 6 of one, half a dozen the other, but Russell didn't actually do anything wrong. Max, again, like I said before, like Ayrton Senna, Max puts you in a position where if you don't let him through and back out, you're going to crash. So he leaves it up to you to have an accident. And Russell did the correct thing, in my opinion, and not back down. I think that's a great thing about this generation of drivers. If Max goes against somebody and tries to have a wheel with him, everybody is not afraid of him. They see him. It's almost like they respect Max, but they see him as this egotistical driver. It's an ego factor, and half of them are just annoyed with him anyway, so they're not going to listen to him. So he'll get pushed off out of the way. But one thing I'm surprised about is I've remembered in the past drivers getting fines and even in one case a grid penalty for swearing at fellow competitors in media areas. As well, if they're caught doing it, they get fines. George called Max, no, the other way around. Max called George a bleep head as well, begins with a D. And I thought to myself in the commentary, why did you just say that, you absolute fool? As well, because it's not needed. That's what I can't stand. There's two sides of Max, as I said. I love one side of him, I hate the other. And this weekend, he's thrown the toys out as well of the pram. He was angry that Perez was faster. He's angry that Perez did the double by winning the sprint and the feature. He's angry that he's now losing points in the championship. But he's failing to see the positives. He was still second. He's still got on the podium. He's still been either first or second this season. There's a lot still going for him. But he needs to rein his ego in big time. And that's not even the main rant. You caught me by surprise on that one there, Ben.
I just want your thoughts on it because I know it was a major talking point coming into today, and I think some people are looking at Max as having a history of being an aggressive driver himself and yet not liking it when he gets raced aggressively. But at the same time, I think we do have to weigh the balance because we always complain about how this current generation of drivers don't show enough personality and they're too vanilla, and Max clearly fits outside of that. So I think personalities like that are needed in the sport, but at the same time, you could maybe say it's a little hypocritical coming from Verstappen based on how he's raced in the past. But we'll leave it at that for now, or we have a comment first at Hunter. Max said it because he is used to saying whatever he likes without consequence. See also some offensive comments he made as well a few years ago. And yeah, but that's true as well, Max. It does have a history of that as well. So we'll leave it at that and see where that goes from here. Maybe it could have an impact on the championship. Maybe it won't. What will have an impact on the championship is whether or not Ferrari can get their act together. Ferrari and Charles Leclerc had a much better weekend and more than doubled the points that they earned before this weekend. Ferrari looked better today, fast in the single run setup in qualifying, but lacking speed and had to manage to race more. So Josh, is Ferrari working their way back up towards the top, or was this just a case of the track and the long straights at Baku helping them out and just kind of a one-off here?
Well, Charles Leclerc got pole position for the sprint and the main Grand Prix, and they seem to have a good setup. He has been on pole for the last two seasons, well, 2021 and 2022, so now he's doing it again for the third time. That's mega impressive. Ferrari like this track. There's something that just clicks with their car whenever they come here. I was a bit disappointed to see that in the sprint race, he held off Perez for 11 laps. Only today, he couldn't hold off Verstappen for 6. And by both of that, by lap 6, both the cars were through. That was a disappointment, but they did start on the medium compound tyre in the sprint. They started on the softs in the sprint. They won the medium, so doubled the length, doubled the duration. But Ferrari have actually brought in some new upgrades. I'm trying to see if I've got my liked tweets somewhere because I've liked a few of them over the past couple of days. But there was an interesting fact I want to pick up on. Here we go. About what we've got for Ferrari, what they brought this weekend. The only thing they changed, whereas Red Bull, listen to this, I've got the details here. Red Bull changed side pod, engine cover, floor edge, floor fences, rear corner. So that's their improvements that they brought in. Ferrari changed one thing, the rear wing. And that rear wing was an ultra low downforce wing, and it worked perfectly. So they're going to be fast here. They're going to be fast at Spa later on in the season. They're going to be fast probably next weekend in Miami because it's a similar setup circuit with the two long straights back to back. So Ferrari have got something, and they can start challenging for race wins. It's not too late for the title, but Red Bull are using the fast car that they started with from the end of 2022 before the cost cap gets, the penalties get applied in the second half of the season. They're using this time to push the maximum out of the car in order to get the points done early on the board. I've even heard rumours that they're going to stop developing this year's car as early as the Belgium Grand Prix, which is before the summer break. So everything will stop there and they'll focus on next year because they're so limited on aero time for the 2024 car. That is when we're all waiting for what is going to be another close season because everyone's going to close up because they'll be dealing with the cost cap penalty from 2021. So it's insane.
Yeah, I have to agree that it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the cost cap affects Red Bull in these coming races. But I think that for Ferrari's setup for today, I think that, like Joshua said, it was mostly, I think that the track was just more suited to the Ferrari today. And that's where they found some of the pace that they've been lacking. And hopefully that'll continue with some of the future tracks that are similar. But I think that really it's difficult to say if this was a one-off thing or whether or not they are closing that gap. I think I'd lean more towards the side of it's really the track that helped out the Ferraris this weekend. And they still struggled with tire degradation and other elements that Red Bull seems to have locked down week in and week out that Ferrari's going to need to bring upgrades in these coming races to be able to challenge really and be a serious contender for race wins.
And I believe we have a couple comments coming in through the chat room here as well. Ed Hunters, here we go. Sorry, I think Joe's backstage trying to... Go ahead, Joe, bring it up. There we go. Ferrari strikes me as very peaky and difficult to set up. Great in qualifying. Chews through its tires in the race. And another one from Adam Lemery's. Next weekend is Miami, and it's going to be incredible. It's certainly a spectacle last year, and we'll see what the TV rating side is here in the United States. That's going to be interesting to look at as well. And good to see Iron Kong 26 in the chat here as well. Now let's move on to Mercedes. Not a good weekend for that team again. Lewis Hamilton's sixth place was the highest finishing result for the Mercedes team. You see George Russell down there in eighth as well. Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz both ahead in fourth and fifth, respectively. Amanda, are you surprised that after a 3-week break, Mercedes still seem behind Aston Martin and perhaps now even Ferrari?
I was somewhat surprised. It seemed like they maybe weren't able to capitalize as much coming off of a bad qualifying and then in either in the sprint shootout or in the race. I think that you could definitely see they were struggling a bit. And I think that being behind the Aston Martin is got to be a bit demoralizing for them to be falling from a potential third to now a potential fourth. So I think that the Mercedes team has definitely got their heads down and they're slowly chipping away. And I wouldn't count them out yet. I think that the upgrades will come and they still have a lot of potential to turn the season around. But today was definitely a disappointing performance from the Mercedes.
Yeah, I completely agree. They've wasted their opportunity for what could have been a good weekend with everything they've done. As you said, Amanda, they've got a upgrade coming, but it's not going to be here for Miami. It's going to be here for Imola at Emilia-Romagna in a couple of weeks' time. So that is going to be where they're going to sort of hope to adapt the W14 into a performance car. So it's going to be more akin to what we saw with the W13. with some added on bits from this year's car. And I don't think we're going to see that car being as fast until Spain in early June. So that's going to be quite fun. I know you've got the next question coming up, and I'm desperately trying to get a graphic uploaded as well, because I got sent this by the FIA and it won't send to my computer at the moment. So I'm trying to airdrop it to get it in. It's just affecting it. About the Alpine story. I've got the beep saying it's coming in. That's great. But yeah, so Mercedes have got some big upgrades. And just to bring again, what they brought here was a new rear wing end plate, front corner, rear corner. So the side pods, effectively, with their non-side pod bits. And they also changed the front suspension. That was all for performance and circuit specific on the front corner. And it didn't work. And as SHD says, the long straights made the Mercedes so draggy, they struggled to overtake the cars even with the DRS. That's true. Hamilton and Russell were both stuck behind Alonso and Stroll during the race. And it just got ridiculous. I got so upset seeing the drivers so slow, effectively. And hopefully it's going to be a lot easier by the time we get to Spain. And that graphic is now uploaded. So I'm going to throw it back to you now, Ben.
And SHT also saying Sainz absolutely a stinky weekend, finishing 23 seconds behind Alonso, just not comfortable with the car. Iron Kong 26, I think a lot of people shared this opinion, absolutely terrible. Baku race needed that IndyCar palette cleanser, and we will have more on the IndyCar race later on in the show. Josh, I think it's the moment you've been waiting for here. One scary moment that gained much attention occurred on the last lap. Esteban Ocon was coming in to the pits. Several people were in the way and had to take evasive action not to get hit by his Alpine. The FIA had to summon the stewards and is investigating this clearly unsafe situation. So, Josh, what are the communications between the stewards, the race director, and the FIA as all this is going on, and how in the world did this happen?
Right, at the beginning of each race, so we get an information from the race director in the race director's notes. Inside that race director's notes is a pit lane map specific for TV journalists and photographers. There is a red line across that, here we are, look, where we cannot go across. This is the Parc Ferme image here. So we cannot go across where the pit wall is and where the red line is. Now, if we just take it off for just a second, this is we also get this on this Saturday night. It's just been seen. We get a long document list, and this is the post-race interview and podium ceremony procedure. So basically, we read through it. It usually tells us who's doing the driver interviews. It's useful for the teams to know what to do. It's useful as broadcasters to know who's doing the interview. So I can say, let's go down to Naomi Schiff. She's talking with the top three, or David Coulthard, whatever. And inside this, it tells us where everyone needs to be, how the drivers need to be weighed, what the procedure will be for the trophy. So winning driver, medal for the winning driver, constructors, second and third, then the music, Carmen playing, blah, blah, blah. Inside that document is this. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew. Where's it gone? I've lost the little image. Here it is. Thank you. Right, this image as well. This is the complete information of what the teams get and all the journalists as well. This is where you are supposed to be standing. If you see the photographer's waiting area here, that is supposed to be where they go, as well as I'm being ushered away outside with some new documents information for they've got a decision being told. So that's great. We'll get onto that in a second. So back on the image to try and talk about it. It's all getting chaotic now. Photographers' waiting area. That is where they wait on the final lap of the race. Once the last car has crossed the line, they will then be released into Parc Ferme. You can see a little fence there, the black line with the FIA and F1 logos around it. That gets erected for Parc Ferme, and it shuts off between the FIA garage, number one, and race control, and in front of the podium, and where the top three go. So the FIA scales where all drivers must go is located inside the FIA garage. They'll get through left on the fence on the left-hand side. The second and third driver finish behind, and the race winner go through into where the TV people are and everything as well, and the photographers are behind that fence. As you can see, the remaining finishers parking alongside the fast lane as well, just in front of the photographers. That gets gated off. That's how it's supposed to go. What didn't happen today was, because of the confusion as well, in terms of the fact that they released people from the waiting area on the second to last lap, it meant that when Esteban Ocon came into the pit lane, this fence was already erected and the photographers were already in position. Now, you can see where the pit wall is. and the photographers are lined up in the fast lane. So when Ocon came in, the photographers were there because they were allowed to be. So it was an absolutely dangerous situation that should never happen. We could have honestly seen people killed here. Absolutely terrible. We can take that graphic away now as well. Thank you very much behind the scenes because we've got the decision on this and it's just come through. On Parc Fermé, the FIA summoned the FIA themselves to the stewards and they given fact persons blocking the fast lane in the pit lane on the final lap of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix while the pit lane remained open. And that is a breach of Article 12.2.1H and 12.3.1 of the International Sporting Code. The FIA have fined themselves, basically. Here's the decision. The stewards heard from the FIA representatives and determined that the relevant representations took steps to set up the Parc Fermé area and also permitted media and other personnel to gather in the start of the pit lane and the pit wall during the last lap of the race, while the pit lane was open and before the final pit stop of Esteban Ocon, car 31. We noted that it was not unusual for the representations to be allowed such persons into the pit lane just before the end of the race in the usual course of preparation, Parc Fermé and the podium ceremony. However, in this case, there was one driver that had to pit in the last lap, and this created a very dangerous situation for all those that were in the pit lane at the time. We considered that it was fortunate there was no serious consequences on account of what happened today. We stressed that the requirements of ensuring a safe and orderly event are paramount. This was acknowledged by the FIA team. We walked through the relevant procedures and protocol with the FIA regulations, similar to what I've just done for you here on the Grid Network, including FOM, that's the Formula Management Team, and the teams and the FIA. So the media, the FOM media, the teams and the FIA all got briefed on this to ensure that this situation does not occur again. The FIA representations expressed their regret at what happened and assured us that they would do so in time for the next events. Basically, not do it before the end of the race. So effectively, what we got from that is the FIA haven't fined anybody, and they're not going to fine themselves because there's no one to fine. They're not going to reprimand anyone because they can't reprimand themselves because that would be a breach of guidelines of themselves. That would have to be an internal procedure. The stewards can't do it. So basically, what's going to happen now is the old procedure is back in place. No one's allowed in the pit lane until the last cars cross the checkered flag because we saw drivers coming to the pit lane on the last lap all the time. The F2 race, the sprint, ended inside the pit lane thanks to the crash at turn 1. And Ed points out, saying, to me, this is F1 prioritizing sponsors and photographic angles over safety. By the way, Josh, stewards are independent from the FIA and are not marking their own homework. That's true, but the FIA have their own set of stewards from this season as well from Formula One because they've got their own system in Geneva fact-checking everything. So actually this year they have to be integral to the FIA. The driver steward is the only one that isn't permanent. Everyone else is permanent on that team. That's new for this year after the Michael Masi situation a couple of years ago. For Formula E and every other series, that remains the same where they're not linked to the FIA, they're independent. But it's sort of been revolved around Formula One because Motorsport World does. So that's my rant over, and hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on everything that happened with Esteban Ocon today. And I apologize for people coming in because it was just telling me about the decision.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly clarified things for me. I remember watching and seeing the photographers jump out of the way at the last second and rewinding, being like, this can't be, like, no way that a driver is coming down the pit lane. And I thought that maybe Esteban was in the wrong there, but obviously he wasn't. But yeah, obviously a major safety concern to see them having to dive out of the way at the last second. And thankfully it all turned out fine. But yeah, hopefully the FIA really does take these steps to make sure that we're not caught in this sort of situation again. But thanks for clarifying, Josh, because I was very, very confused.
I'm actually glad for once that I'm not. I thought I was spouting usual psychobabble because I've had people explain to me that I say things at like 90 miles an hour. Not everybody gets it. So at least I helped you, at least, Amanda, to understand all that. And I hope everybody watching understands just a little bit easy on that.
Yeah, I just can't believe that after all the controversy with what happened with Pierre Gasly last year and the tractor on the track and everything, there's been a lot of talk about safety in this sport. I just can't believe that a situation like this happened. And I hope that they take all the necessary steps to ensure that it never happens again. I understand we have a comment on the chat room regarding Mercedes. What is the red line for you guys to count them out? I think the 2023 season is already over for them. Josh, I can hand this over to you, but I think in terms of a championship, very unlikely at this point.
I love what Ed's just put in. Says, "Oh, trust me, you are Josh. We're all the same on the Psycho Babble font." That's good. Yeah, I just completely zone out and just start explaining things. But yeah, what a fun thing. And there's the points look on the standings. That looks great though. Look at that, 180. They're what? I'm 93 ahead of Aston Martin. What round 4? I can't remember. Mercedes did this, didn't they, in 2014? This is absolutely bizarre. And people say Formula One's boring. No, this is interesting. There's something always. People say that today's Azerbaijan race wasn't interesting. I found it. There's always something to look for, and there's little things I've noticed, like the new front wing I noticed on the Aston Martin that I haven't seen all weekend long was on today. So that's a little setup change they're allowed to make in Parc Fermé. I noticed also the fact that Haas, they're struggling in long runs at the moment with the new setup car they've bought. As I think someone mentioned earlier on, Ferrari, they're destroying their tyres still on soft compound tyre. We saw that in the sprint race, so we noted that down. There's always something good to pick out of a Formula One race, no matter how boring it is. The only boring race I've ever seen in Formula One, not counting Spa 21, was Monaco 21, because nothing happened in that race, not one overtake on track, and we were all bored, and we couldn't wait to get to the Indy 500, and then we all forgot that it wasn't on later on that day, and it got moved to August because of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's definitely, I wouldn't count, back to the Mercedes question, I wouldn't count them out quite yet, but I mean, or at least I should say, I know I shouldn't count them out quite yet, but I do see this being solidly in Red Bull's court. And I think it'll still be interesting to see what sort of fight develops between Aston Martin and Red Bull. I mean, Aston Martin and Mercedes, that is. And then seeing how Ferrari can maybe make their way back with some of these updates. But I think that, I mean, I won't speak quite yet about who I am very confident will take this championship and wrap it up. But I do think that, like Joshua said, like there's still a lot of interesting developments to come and a lot of interesting races to come, even if the championship might be pretty much sealed up by one team.
One final point, if Joe can bring up the results just again, because I wanted to check where Lando Norris finished, because I had to run off and do MotoGP. We'll get on to that in a second. Where did he finish in the overall results? P9. Yeah, brilliant. So look, double points finish in a row then for McLaren. They had one in Australia. They've had one here as well in Baku, which is great news. The new updates they've brought to that car for Baku that they were desperate for. Absolutely desperate for in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. They got lucky in Australia. This is the first race we've seen them actually have pace, and I think they work brilliantly. So there's another thing we can put on the board and say, look, that works. McLaren are back up there competing. I think Williams qualified 12th with Albon, had a poor race. Sargent still needs some work after crashing in sprint qualifying. But Williams are looking strong again. There's always things to pick. And one thing I love is going through on Monday and looking at all the lap charts as well and the times and just noting things on long runs as well and building up the picture of a Grand Prix. So much more happens than what we just see on the TV screen. There is literally thousands and thousands and thousands of gigabytes of data to look through. And it's just fantastic stuff. And we all enjoy knowing more about the sport we love. Anyway, we've done half an hour on one subject. I'm going to throw it back to you, Ben.
A couple more comments. Ed Hunter, Perez keeping Verstappen out of range and pushing like crazy was fascinating to me. Even Max had to reluctantly accept Checo did the better job today. A similar thing happened with Albon in Melbourne last year, where he pit on the final lap as VIPs were being led out to the podium. So that's true. Not even the first time we've had people on the track as the race was still finishing up. I want to say hi to Josh T as well. And I believe we're going to wrap up the F1 segment. Amanda and I are going to go backstage. We'll bring Joe and Kobe back in, and we'll talk MotoGP.
Thank you, Ben. That was quite an interesting Formula One discussion. I haven't seen the race, but it sounds like I need to go back and watch it as soon as we get off of here, because I obviously missed a whole lot. And now moving on to MotoGP. The Spanish Grand Prix highlighted how close the competition in MotoGP can be when Ducati doesn't have that long straight advantage. KTM looked poised for a 1-2 finish, then a 1-3 finish, but had to settle for a 2-3 finish as Pecco Bagnaia took the lead with a few laps remaining, while Marco Bezzecchi, Aleix Espargaro, and Fabio Quartararo had a rough day. After today's race, where Pecco looks hard to beat, who is the best chance at bringing the fight to him in the championship?
I'm going to say Brad Binder, to be fair. I think that KTM looked really on form this weekend. Victory in the sprint race yesterday, was leading off the second start today. And I think he just dropped back in the last couple of stages to Bagnaia. But still, there is an interesting battle going on between them two. They're both 2 for 2 in the sprints. And now Bagnaia is 2 out of 4 in the opening races. Then we have Bezzecchi with 1 and Rins with 1 as well. So there's definitely something going on. But Binder's closed right up in the standings. He's now just behind Bezzecchi. So it's Bagnaia, Bezzecchi, Binder, 1, 2, 3 in the standings. It's fantastic. And there we have it. Sorry I wasn't on yesterday as well. I was at a dinner party for Megan's birthday. So it was yesterday because now it's May for us. So we're already in the month of May and I'm buzzing. But yeah, it was definitely going to be, I think, Bezzecchi and Binder. That KTM looked really on form this weekend. Bagnaia, I think, got lucky. He was nowhere all weekend long. He had to go through qualifying 1. That's how bad the bike was on Saturday. Got lucky with the sprint and really dominated the race as well at a late stage. Today should have been all about Binder, though. He got robbed of a race win because he had to do 2 starts and it destroyed the tyres on the bike.
After this race, Brad Binder to KTM, they look really good. The thing is, to see KTM all year long as a championship contender, I feel that's a little hard for me to be convinced that's the case. I know Austria Red Bull Ring, that's going to be a track they'll probably have circled. There's some tracks as well that I feel Brad Binder could really excel at. Big thing, I feel they have to step up their game overall, get some good finishes, get some consistent, strong point finishes. Because if they have that consistency, if Pecco Bagnaia can improve his consistency, I think Pecco will still have the upper edge. But if he doesn't, if he continues to win or crash out, then maybe that's where the KTMs could really put together a good effort to try to overtake Pecco Bagnaia. When it comes to Marco Bezzecchi, I just feel similar to Enea Bastianini last year. I think that team is just going to start slipping back further and further to the point where they're not contending for the championship. But it's going to just be really interesting to see how they respond to what happened going out in this race.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see how they respond to this. And one of the big things that happened in this
I think we lost Kobe there for a second, but one of the things, Joshua, I know when it came to the MotoGP race, overall, like we were talking about, very good racing that we saw. But that first lap crash, Fabio Quartararo, Miguel Oliveira, and again, Oliveira stretched it away, favoring that left arm. They say it was a dislocated shoulder, so we're hoping we're going to see Miguel Oliveira back, but tough break to see him come back from injury and then be out again. So they hit Fabio Quartararo with a penalty, long lap penalty, and then he had to redo it again. Do you agree with the call to penalize Fabio Quartararo twice?
Are you ready for this? To be had the Formula 1. Now let's get in the MotoGP. Hashtag Freddie Spencer must go has been trending on Twitter for MotoGP since the race. This weekend has been some of the worst decisions I've ever seen in the history of motorsport. And I thought Formula 1 were bad with penalties. My God, was I wrong. Freddie Spencer is an ex MotoGP rider, and he is head of the stewards, who is run by IWRA as well, separate entity to Dorna as well. So like Ed said earlier with the FIA, they have separate, the stewards and MotoGP are. Now, Freddie Spencer took over 3 years ago. In that time, in his second race, Kyle Crutchlow got a penalty for rolling off the start ever so carefully as well. And everybody was against Freddie for that. Now, penalties have been getting worse and worse and worse. No penalties needed. I can't believe that we've got 3 years in. He's never spoken to the media. He's never even met the riders. He's never met Dorna. And now, for the first time after today and this entire weekend, an abysmal mess. Absolutely abysmal mess. This is like changing the result of an Indy 500 that was 15 years ago, and everybody's up in arms. It's like what Felipe Massa is trying to do with Lewis Hamilton. You don't do it. You don't do it. It will create so much drama and tension. This is exactly it. This is the same amount of tension. What Freddie Spencer has done this weekend is shocking. It is despicable, and it is a sackable thing, in my opinion. He's literally lap one, turn one incident, Quartararo on the inside line, and he got taken out by Bezzecchi. He got taken out fully by Bezzecchi. And then he hit Oliveira because there was nowhere to go. He was right in the middle, zero place to go, no room at all. Quartararo went down, Oliveira went with him. Both were injured. Simon Patterson said that when he saw Quartararo in the paddock, even though he was allowed to race, it looked like he'd been unconscious. He was groggy, dazed, and he got back on a bike and raced the rest of the distance, whole again, 24 laps. Why is that happening? Why is that wrong? Why wasn't he checking the medical centre? Rules aren't in place for that with a concussion. In terms of the on-track penalties, he was given a long lap penalty for causing that collision. It wasn't his fault. It was a racing incident that was caused by Bezzecchi above all else. So he should be getting a penalty. But even Oliveira and Bezzecchi said themselves, that's not a penalty. Half the field have said it's not a penalty. So no one gets where it's coming from. And he got given a long lap penalty. He took it and he momentarily touched the green. Now, the letter of the law is if you touch the green, you get another long lap penalty. It's deemed incomplete. However, it was given because he was gaining an advantage. He wasn't gaining an advantage. He was looking over his shoulder to see the riders coming through so he rejoined safely on the track. It was not to get an advantage. It was purely safety matter. And they gave him it again. Absolutely ridiculous. Bagnaia was told to drop a position because he did a fantastic dive bomb maneuver on Jack Miller. Why was that? That was a brilliant maneuver. Miller did a dive bomb maneuver on Jorge Martin. He was never told to give a place back. And the inconsistencies. Freddie Spencer seems to be making up as he goes along. There's been long rumours in the paddock that he's got favourite teams and he's got favourites as well, and that's why he gives harsher penalties to one or the other. Marc Marquez used to give penalties against riders who went for him, and then Marc Marquez annoyed him, and now it's shifted. Marc gets a penalty every other weekend. Freddie Spencer should not be in charge of the stewarding in MotoGP whatsoever. And that's not just me saying that. It's the riders saying it. That's the media saying it. That's even Dorna saying it themselves that this is getting too wrong. We have got a dictator in charge of stewarding the MotoGP. And here's the problem. The fact is that we've got a dictator in charge who won't leave and has also rewritten the rule book so that nobody else can run the sport. Nobody else can do it because he's making it up as he goes along. The stewards are now so inconsistent with their rulings. Every time they even look at the rule book, it bursts into flames. It's like we've thrown holy water on it as well. It's a demonic series that's happening right now, and it is ruining the great spectacle. We have waited years for MotoGP to be so competitive with so many different forms of bike. KTM, Aprilia, Yamaha, Ducati, Honda, 5 manufacturers all in there fighting, and any one of them can win. And we're going to have dive bomb maneuvers. If you don't go for a move, you're no longer a racing driver. Every rider says that. Every driver says that. Senna said it. And now we're getting penalised for going for these maneuvers. It's not right. It is not on. And honestly, after this weekend, with the amount of penalties we've seen from Freddie Spencer, the riders are fed up. And Freddie Spencer, as I said, for the first time, is meeting with the riders, Dorna, ILM, and the Wars media at the French Grand Prix. I don't think I'll make it that far. The riders are even saying it's time for Freddie Spencer to leave. MotoGP is in a turning point right now, and after this weekend, it is in a very, very dangerous turning point. Whether we go Wild West rules or we go normal, sensible rules. Basically, it's a bit like Good Omens. We've got the angels on one side and we've got the devils on the other. And we've just got in the middle Freddie Spencer, and he's dancing between both sides. It's unbelievable. Many people saying I'm being a bit too harsh. I'm not. Freddie Spencer is going to get somebody killed one day if he continues doing this. That is honestly what's going to happen. he is a dangerous, dangerous person in charge of these stewarding rules, and it is ruining our sport, and it is ruining the integrity of MotoGP. He should go.
Now, one of the things, Freddie, he's been around since 2018, 2019 when he was appointed to the FIM stewards, I believe. And I remember 2019, especially, people were saying, hey, Marc Marquez is riding extra rough, extra aggressive. Nothing happened. Now we seem to have where a lot of people, oh, they're going to be that hard, that aggressive. So I was really shocked when I saw the penalty for Fabio because I felt like that was, as you mentioned, as the writers mentioned, a racing incident. If you had to give somebody a penalty, maybe Marco Bezzecchi, but even then I felt that was stretching it.
Mm.
And then when I understand the letter law versus the intent, he was not accelerating out the long lap penalty zone with a advantage. That was just, I just couldn't believe it. It was just something where I think as now we're seeing, even when we talk about the importance of the stewards being consistent, the growing presence of more fans. MotoGP, a huge year with a sprint race in every one. Maybe this is getting to the point where MotoGP needs to step back. What can we do to better the officiating? So overall, I just think it's going to be something else with me, and that will be interesting to see what happens in the chat room. Josh, not a fan of Freddie Spencer. That's pretty much, I think, a lot of people, as they said, because the officiating since Freddie has joined 2019, I believe, it just seems like MotoGP, the riders have become more aggressive. The riders have become more contact, and it's always a safety concern. I know there's people out there that just, they love MotoGP, but they just get nervous because something happens. There's no roll cage or anything to really keep the riders safe.
And before we throw back to Kirby, I think that's another thing as well. We've seen now 2 accidents yesterday in the sprint and today on the opening lap. And the red flag took ages to come out on both when there was riders clearly very hurt on the track. The latest I know that Oliveira, as you said earlier, did dislocate his left shoulder. That has been fixed in the medical centre. That takes a while to heal. I don't think he'll be at the French Grand Prix. So it's again another effect on him not being in the championship. Such a shame. The RNF guys and girls have done so great to get that bike on track this year, and it's a shame that he can't run it. I did actually say I'm not proud of this, but I'm happy I got it right. Is what I was saying. That when we saw the replay and we saw Oliveira hit the gravel, I said in the commentary, I'm not sure about this. Don't quote me, but I think he's done his shoulder. The way he landed completely on his shoulder on the left side, and it was a heavy whack into the gravel, which is the same as Portimao. And I said at the time, they hate this type of gravel. It's too big, it's too sharp, and it causes injuries to the riders. So I think there's also a question about whether Jerez is suited for MotoGP now. 2 starts and 2 crashes and a red flag on both. So I think there might need to be a few alterations there. But I hope not, because I do like this track. But Marc Marquez crashed in. He's still not recovered. So I wish the best for Miguel Oliveira. It's not a nice place to crash. It ended Kevin Swanson's career, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. And apologies, my internet went out because a rainstorm it came through, and when that happens, the internet becomes very spotty. So hopefully it remains well for the rest of the show. And as you guys have been talking about with MotoGP here, gonna be looking forward to the French Grand Prix coming up at the Bugatti Circuit, home of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Before we move over to, and actually before I move on to this, a comment there from Josh T said they want to race for as much, but that doesn't work when there's someone's going to get really injured. Yeah, we really hope that this situation in MotoGP doesn't spiral out of control more than it already has. And as Josh was saying, we don't want to see someone get hurt. And before we switch to IndyCar, Josh, I want to ask you about your opinion on Dani Pedrosa's 7th place finish, and as Julia shared her thoughts on the new women's motorcycle racing series planned for next year.
Dani Pedrosa, to start with, first part of the question, I think, why did he ever retire? I mean, Dani Pedrosa, he topped the practice session on Friday in P1, and I was like, fantastic. It's a long time since I said that. Honestly, top-notch guy there. Really, really appreciated what we saw from Dani Pedrosa this weekend in a wild card, and I hope he does a couple more this season. I think he's still got it in him, for a race win. I was hoping he might sneak through. And I even said to Julia, actually, as well, and I sent her a question, said, could Pedrosa win? And she says, hope so. So I think that's a possibility in the future. And the new women's motorcycle series plan, well, I love it. First of all, love it. I'm so angry at the fact that we haven't got F1 Academy broadcast live on television. That's in highlights at the moment. So angry about that. We need representation out there, and I really was looking forward to seeing the races because I loved W Series so much. So first of all, I'm really happy that the Dorna are progressing with a female-only support category that can get young female riders up into the likes of Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP. One thing I'm not happy about, though, when asked about what the Series A is going to look like, B, what the format's going to be, C, where they're going to get this talent from and how riders are going to come into it, and D, when they're going to be on the calendar, they all went, It's just what basically the exceptional press conference was literally just like, okay, we all went to the pub last night. We thought this would be a jolly good idea, and we're going to announce it. But the problem is, we are all white men who's age 60 above, and we've got no idea how to get this up and running. I mean, it was like you were dying of cringe, all of it. And it was literally head in the hands. The media were making fun of them because it was a press conference to announce they had this idea and hadn't thought it through. So it was a bit like that scene in Shaun of the Dead, you know, when they're trying to work out where they're going. If anyone's seen it, it's a very British film, but I know it's international. Trying to work out where they're going, where either they'll go to the mums, they'll go to the pub, or they'll go back to the house. It's the same thing that's happening here. They don't know where to go, what to do, or how they're going to do it. It's ridiculous. So I hope they have more common sense and get this sorted ASAP, because I think a women's motorcycle series, as getting them into Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP, fantastic idea. But I worry, I really do. The fact is that every single time we've seen this, they don't do it right. And it's heartbreaking because it's a great series. And I think, as what Ed pointed out, I've been talking to some female fans about women's world motorcycling. They're really upset that they went. It's not a promotional cup, it's a final destination. Sends the wrong message for women. Yeah, I've spoken to a few actually as well about that, and that's why I'm also against W Series to begin with. And it is right, because Jamie Chadwick took 3 seasons to get out there, and as soon as she left, the series folded. So there was no competition there, unfortunately. But I think if it's done right, it could be a step up. And I think that's why F1 Academies come in. It's not designed to be a final destination F1 Academy. It's designed to be a stepping stone. But the problem is they're paying $150,000 and nobody's there to see it. So that's failing. And I'm worried about this MotoGP series that's coming because they need to do it right. And I hate it because it's not being done by women. It's not being done by the women who know the sport, who know how to get other women into the sport. It's being done by 60-year-old men who are having last gasp ideas. And it is so frustrating. It really, really is. But it's a great idea to bring it in. And I'm really hoping that we're going to have that series professionally run and as soon as possible. We need it. But don't make it the final destination. Like Ed says, so many people think it is. Say the champion progresses up to Moto3. End of. We get it done. Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Josh, you brought up a lot of excellent points. If they're going to do this series, I'd rather see them do it right. And if they're not going to do it right, I'd rather them just go ahead and not even do it at all. We talked about the F1 Academy. Actually, we've been talking about it all throughout the week. It's really disappointing that there's no TV deal for that. Like, what are the drivers in this series getting out of this if they're not being broadcasting? Like, us, the viewers at home, we're not going to be knowing what's going on unless we have great reporters like Daniel Zeri, who was at the racetrack. And in these situations, I brought up the point on yesterday's pre-race show, it's more important than ever that we have journalists covering those races on site with the F1 Academy, because otherwise we're not going to really have any earthly idea of what's going on besides the highlights that they're putting out on the F1 Academy social media channels. I really feel like Formula One's dropping the ball with that. Hopefully it's just a rough start, and it'll get better over time. But it's been very disappointing to see how that's been done, and I really hope that this new all female motorcycle series will be run a lot better.
All right. Yeah, now it's time to talk a series that has been incredibly interesting so far. The NTT IndyCar Series Children's of Alabama Grand Prix at Barber Motorsport Park is in the books, and the pole sitter, Romain Grosjean, was on a 2-stop strategy, while Scott McLaughlin was on the 3-stop strategy. A caution for Stingray Robb played into the hands of the 2-stoppers, and race control held off the caution until all the cars on the same 3-stop strategy as McLaughlin had pitted. So my first question for you, Ben, is do you believe that it's okay for race control to hold off the caution during a pit stop cycle?
I'll be very curious to see what Josh has to say, because I know Josh has already done a couple of rants in today's show. I'm wondering if he's going to have a third one for us right here. But no, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's not okay in my mind I think it borders on race manipulation, to be quite honest. If you have a situation where there's a car stopped on track that is going to necessitate a caution, first of all, that's a safety issue. The caution should come out as soon as possible if that's the reason for it. But also, so you've got the safety consideration there as well. But also, it's unfair to the competitors that have come into the pits already to give the other competitors that they're racing against the opportunity to come into the pits as well. I mean, racing is an unfair sport sometimes. You're going to have a caution that falls your way or doesn't fall your way. That's just how racing goes. And I think to manipulate the race to say, we're going to hold on, this is a stalled car on the track that clearly needs, a caution to be thrown here or a safety car to come out or whatever. Let's wait to do that until we let the entire field decide whether or not they want to pit. I mean, I just think that's race manipulation. And on top of that, it's a safety concern because it allows the entire field one circuit around the track while you've got a stalled car. I don't care how far off the track it is. If it's stalled on the race or anywhere near the racing surface, it's a safety hazard. You've got to throw the caution right away. So I don't believe it's okay for race control to hold the caution and let the pit cycle go through. If the caution needs to come out, you've got to throw it immediately.
I'm with you 110%, Ben, because it was ridiculous. Because if that was a huge accident with carbon fiber everywhere and a driver needing medical attention immediately, and it's right in the path of other drivers, that would have been an instant caution as soon as it happened. Because it was stopped at the side of the track, it wasn't, and we had the opinion that, okay, we'll wait until everyone gets in the pit stops and we'll go through. What's to happen? Because it's an exit of a corner, driver comes around, puts a wheel on the curb like we saw in the race, round to go, bang, into the side of Stingray Robb, and he's stationary. And it's a huge accident. It was ridiculous. A car had stopped, couldn't get going. We knew it. It should have been a caution. Not coming in and putting in for pit stops, coming in as well, and putting in as well. I said it. I knew as soon as I said it, that Ed is going to pick up on that 110%. It means I'm backtracking 10%. I'm still completely behind you. I knew you were going to pick something on there. I knew Ed would pick that. I know him too well all that. No, but I am with you, Ben, on this, because it should have been an instant caution. I didn't like how they allowed the pit stops to go through, because it actually disadvantaged a few who had pitted 2 laps before, who were on the 2-stop strategy, and it allowed everyone on the 3-stop strategy to keep in advantage for the race. Effectively, it did manipulate the race, and it did affect the race result. Grosjean was on 2-stop strategy, and he should have won it. McLaughlin was on a 3-stop strategy, finished the race on alternative tyres, and he got the lead at the end of it because he was on a different strategy because of the caution. If that caution had come out immediately, he wouldn't have been able to have done that, and we would have had Grosjean in the lead of the race. So it was effectively a race manipulation. It put things in play, and it's not fair. It's not. And I think race control also made a mistake by not throwing the caution. Although I was surprised to see it was the only one we had during that race. I was expecting at least 3.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique situation, and Barber's never not had a caution, but it was definitely a very low caution race, particularly for Barber. But we did see a little bit of contact. So McLaughlin and Grosjean once again got into it. The two made contact twice after McLaughlin did his final race pit stop. Grosjean got around McLaughlin, but with 19 laps to go, McLaughlin got back around, and Grosjean found himself out of push to pass, so McLaughlin took the first win of 2023. McLaughlin started in 4th place, so he kept the winning streak of winners coming from within the top 10 alive. So 4 different winners in 4 races, and the point standing is so close. And tomorrow's the first of the month of May. So coming into May, which driver and which team would you say looks like they have the best confidence and momentum entering the month of May? And I'll ask this to you first, Kobe.
I'm actually gonna say Team Penske, and I'm gonna not just base it. I'm not gonna base it off only on Scott McLaughlin's win today, but what I saw during the open test that they had the previous week. Team Penske is for the last couple of years seems like that they've really struggled for pace and haven't been showing the type of speed we typically see from Penske at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But during that open test, Joseph Newgarden, that's the car I'm looking at right now as one of the early favorites to win the entire thing. I think the team has certainly found something that works on the speedway, and it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to be able to keep that up throughout the entire month of May. I know right now, looking at Joseph Newgarden's results to start off the season, got that good win at Texas, finished 9th at Long Beach, and then you have the 2 outliers there, 17th on the streets of St. Pete, and then 15th to today at Barber. It seemed like that contact with Felix Rosenqvist at the start really ended up hurting his car, despite those 2 finishes that weren't great and the 1-1. I still think Joseph Newgarden and Team Penske should have the most confidence heading into the month of May. I know he looked really dejected today, but tomorrow's a brand new day and he can be excited that Team Penske has the tools possible to get it done at Indy at the end of the month, at the end of May, actually.
I think it's obviously very early. I want to wait until, we get everybody out on track and, go through qualifying to talk about who my race favorite would be. I think Scott Dixon's the favorite for the pole every month of May until further notice with how many poles he's won, particularly in recent years. But I agree with you, Kobe. I think, it's really kind of been ironic. Ever since Roger Penske bought the Speedway, he was coming off of 2 wins with Will Power and Simon Pagenaud in 18 and 19, and he hasn't won the race since. Rahal won it with Takuma Sato. Shank won it with Castroneves, and then last year Ganassi with Marcus Ericsson. So you're obviously not going to be able to count Ganassi out. I'm sure Andretti's going to come back to the Speedway very strong. They usually do, but it has been a struggle for Penske the last few years. But I think the speed in the open test, like you were mentioning, and obviously the momentum that they have, not just today but throughout the entire season so far, I think it served them well. But we'll know within the next few weeks here as we get cars out on the track.
Award surprised me at Texas. He surprised me in the open test. I think he's got a genuine shot at getting a victory. Marcus Ericsson can't be ruled out. He was going insanely quick as well on the open day. I'm also thinking that we're going to be seeing something from Romain Grosjean. I know many people are. It looks like he's getting ready for something as well. He was really fired up and talking about the 500 as well throughout the weekend. So he's looking forward to it. And I just got this feeling as well that we're going to see something special from Kyle Kirkwood. I don't know what it is, but might get third, might get the podium, but I'm not sure. But there's something coming there. But I just can't wait. It's the month of May. We've got the pagoda, but I can't wait. It's going to be so long. We've got all practice sessions live. I'm covering them all, qualifying as well. Then we've got the race. It's 2 weeks of pure speed, and it's fantastic. It's fun. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it, and I can't wait to get there in 14 days time, 2 weeks effectively before we go for the GMR Grand Prix, and then we go in straight after on the Tuesday on the Oval. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun, and honestly, might need sedating by the end of it because I'll still be smiling because the 500 is honestly one of the best races of the year, and anything can happen. And yes, as Adam says, I am ready for the month of May.
Definitely one of the best races of the year coming up. And we have a comment from Adam. Romain Grosjean is beyond due for an IndyCar win. Truly thought today was his day. And then for you, Joshua, it was totally fair because I predicted McLaughlin to win and I needed the Pecco winner. And I do agree that I'm very happy and I had no problem with them holding up on the call until everyone had finished fitting so that it benefited the 3 stoppers. Because I did get on the board for Pecco winner this week. But yeah, I think back to the question of who looks strong coming into May, definitely I have to agree with Kobe. I'm on the Penske train for sure. And I think that Newgarden looked unstoppable at the test. And Will Power finished 3rd today, but has a new power unit coming. So I think that maybe potentially we could even see something from him. And then also agreeing with Joshua that Award looked crazy at Texas, like crazy good. So it should be interesting to see. But back to Barber, a few more notable mentions from today of finishers outside of the top 10. Marcus Armstrong, the rookie, had a great finish in 11th, and he took home the biggest mover trophy after picking up a total of 15 spots. In 12th, Kyle Kirkwood, last race weekend's winner, was a bit disappointing. Colton Herta 14th, Newgarden 15th, and Rahal Letterman Lanigan only had one driver in the top 15, with Christian Lundgaard finishing in 6th place. So a few drivers out of position, but first question to you, Josh, is who would you say was the biggest disappointment, and who did you maybe expect to see more from at this point in the season?
I think Felix Rosenquist. That's still coming into my mind as well, because I think we barely talked about him in the race. He's up there in the battle for 5th, 6th, and 7th, wasn't he? He was right behind Rossi. But Rosenquist is really struggling. Thinking about it this season as well, where's the shining pace he came into IndyCar with? Looking at the results, trying to find his name on the board, someone can see him first. He's done 15th after 4 races so far this season. Really struggling. And considering he was sort of last in the McLaren seat, because as we all remember over the winter break, McLaren was signing literally every driver on the planet to drive for them in some series. They had like 30 at one point with only about 12 seats. So some of them got loaned back out. Some of them got, in the case of Alex Berg, forced into staying with the team. Not McLaren, the other one, as well. So I think Rosenquist, for me, was the most underperformer from today. And throwing in an extra one, I think, unfortunately today, Romain Grosjean. I think he got a bit unlucky with that caution, and everybody was still pitting. But he also used all of his push to pass and was left himself vulnerable to McLaughlin. He should have had a bit more confidence in himself in the car to at least try and defend and not use the push to pass to try and break the toe. So it swings and roundabouts. My main one is Rosenquist.
Yeah, for sure. And we know there's going to be a lot of pressure on Felix to perform this season, especially since a lot of people expected he's going to be looking for a new ride in 2024, with Alex Palou expected to take that number 6 Chevrolet next season. And like you mentioned, Josh, Rosenquist was the last one to get in with Aaron McLaren SB after so many people thought he would have been out after last season. But fortunately, after showing great form at the end of 2022, Rosenquist was able to convince McLaren to keep him on for another year. And yes, a 7th on 9th place finish, not bad. It got in a little hole there to start off the season. Rosenquist will need to keep those good finishes coming and try to prove to the IndyCar Series paddock that he should stay in IndyCar for the foreseeable future. And in regards to who I thought had the most disappointing day today, I know it's kind of surprising that I was hyping him up for the month of May, but I think Joseph Newgarden had the most disappointing day, because coming to Barber, you expect him to have a really good run at this racetrack. And for the contact with Rosenquist at the start, really ended up putting a damper on things. And it really seemed like something happened with the car, and he just wasn't able to take the fight to anyone at all and just tried his best to salvage as much points as he could. But the one team I'm looking at, being sure to see if they can turn around for the Indy 500, is Meyer-Shank Racing. Elliot Castroneves and Simon Pagenaud have been absolutely nowhere this year. If we get through the Indy 500 and both cars are not looking competitive at all, I would be very concerned if I'm Meyer-Shank Racing at that point. I know the Indy 500 is one race that they're going to have circled on their calendar to hopefully turn this thing around. And maybe next year they could be looking for a new driver or two in their IndyCar driver lineup.
Just adjust the tire pressures at Indy, will be fine. Works for them at Daytona.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a rough start for Meyer-Shank Racing. Another team to talk about who's been off to a little bit of a rough start is Ed Carpenter Racing and Rinus VeeKay. So no top 10 finishes in the first 4 races. 18 drivers have finished in the top 10, but VeeKay has finished with 2 DNFs, an 11th and a 16th today. Back in August 2022, it was announced that VeeKay and Ed Carpenter had agreed to a multi-year contract, Could the month of May and Indianapolis potentially be a make or break month for Ed Carpenter Racing and Rinus VeeKay?
I think it's going to be very important for the entirety of Ed Carpenter Racing to make sure the month of May goes well. Instead of going forward, this team has really taken multiple steps backwards. Their road course program, especially at Rinus VeeKay, you used to be competitive, but for some odd reason, I don't even know what's happened to that team at all. Knowing the road and street courses, we typically see Connor Daly struggling a lot, but when it comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Indy 500, that's where Connor Daly is able to shine, and Rinus VeeKay as well, and Ed Carpenter, who's going to be running the event. Again, I think that this just like Meyer Shank Racing, Ed Carpenter Racing has the Indy 500 circled on their calendar. This is going to be their best opportunity to try to turn things around and get a win. The ECR Chevys always bring fast cars to IMS for the month of May, and it wouldn't surprise me if they continue that tradition of bringing cars that are capable of winning the pole and potentially the race.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think, it's absolutely make or break, and I think they could make it. I think Rinus VeeKay and Connor Daly have an opportunity to show some speed like they have in the past at IMS, and Ed Carpenter as well, of course, a multi-time pole winner. I was just talking about how many poles Scott Dixon's won. Ed Carpenter's got a few of his own as well. So, that entire team, if they can't make it in the month of May, I think it's going to be a very, very rough back end of the season for them as the IndyCar season continues.
Yeah, I think we can definitely expect to see some surprises, or hope to see some surprises and turnaround from teams like Ed Carpenter and Meyer Shank. So, Ben, I think you're going to take us into Supercars now.
That's right. 3 races in the Perth SuperSprint, 3 different winners in a strong weekend of parity. Shane Van Gisbergen, Will Brown, and Brock Feeney all won the pole and their respective races. Everyone expected a continuation of the SVG show, but the racing was more competitive than we imagined it would be. Erebus Motorsport had the best weekend with 3 podiums for Brody Kostecki and 2 for Brown. Meanwhile, SVG and teammate Brock Feeney only had 1 podium in Perth. Kostecki leads the championship standings by 100 points over Walkinshaw Andretti United's Chas Mostert. SVG is third in the championship, 136 points back. Erebus leads the Red Bull Ampol Racing in the team's championship by 101 points. Kostecki has finished on the podium in 8 out of 9 total races so far. Kobe, can Kostecki keep up the consistency and make life difficult for SVG all year long?
I have to say that Brody Kostecki is one of the most pleasant surprises I've seen this year in the Supercars Championship. Out of all of the drivers who could potentially take the fight to Shane Van Gisbergen for the championship, Brody Kostecki wouldn't have been on my list at all. I would have thought like a Chas Mostert or a Cam Waters, but Kostecki, you got to give credit to the entire Erebus Motorsport organization for how fast they've been able to figure out this new Gen 3 car and get both of the drivers, Kostecki and Brown, some really good setups to really show Red Bull Ampol Racing that they're not on top of the mountain this year in Supercars. It'll be interesting to see if Kostecki can keep up this consistency throughout the remainder of the season. And based on what we've seen so far, after a few rounds, I don't see why he can't continue to do this, but knowing Shane Van Gisbergen, he's not going to be out of the fight. He's just going to keep on coming. I know after that one disqualification he had earlier in the season, SVG is in a little bit of a hole right now, but nothing he can't make up. I just think it's set out to potentially be an exciting championship battle. It'll be fun to see Kostecki and Van Gisbergen going back and forth all year long.
As you said, Kobe, is shaping up to be an exciting season of supercar racing, and I think a championship bout we haven't seen in quite some time since Shane Van Gisbergen versus Scott McLaughlin, when those two were really going at it. This is really, I think, really great to see the battle that we have for the points going on. Really, especially after we've had this long break, because the last time the Supercar Series were racing was when Formula One racing was going on at Melbourne. So they had plenty of time to work on the cars and to see that Shane Van Gisbergen is not having it as easily as he thought he would and dominating the series. I think that's a win, not just for Brody Kostecki and his team, but for everybody in the series, because we saw Brock Feeney take a win as well too. I think Will Brown, a lot of potential there. This is shaping up to be, I think, a really exciting season. Shane Van Gisbergen will still be the favorite, no doubt. It's just like when you look at NASCAR and Jimmy Johnson was the top dog, he was always the favorite to win, but we know how competitive it was. Shane Van Gisbergen might continue to be everyone's pick a winner, but I think you're going to see a lot of competition in the Supercar series this year.
Well, on that note, one of the biggest developments this weekend didn't come from what happened on the track, but from a TV interview with Shane Van Gisbergen. On the last episode of Grid Tonight, we talked about SVG signing a multi-year contract extension to stay at Red Bull Ampol Racing and Supercars. During a TV interview, it appears that he slipped up and revealed it's only until the end of the 2024 season. He talked about wanting to do more dirt and rally racing, including more interest in racing in America over Europe, and that brings to mind, of course, the heavy rumors regarding him being a candidate for the Project 91 Trackhouse car. Joe, after SVG revealed this new information and confirmed he's talked to teams outside of Supercars, is this a sign he may leave the series in the near future for a new challenge?
I would say yes, and I think, especially for our viewers that have been following us for a while, especially the grid ranking, you know Shane Van Gisbergen is a very talented racer. The nice part, especially for viewers that have been watching through the grid ranking as well, you may not have heard of Shane Van Gisbergen much, except when we talk about Supercars, but this guy can race. He was so impressive last year in the Rally New Zealand in a WRC2 car to get a podium and finish in the top 10 of that rally race. First time a driver in the same season scored in 2 different disciplines in the grid ranking. Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, has a lot of potential to go to the NASCAR Cup Series. Won't be the first time. Marcus Ambrose did that same route from Supercars to NASCAR. But with Shane Van Gisbergen, I think he has a lot of potential to race in the United States. If he is that driver that's being rumored for the Project 91, that'll be a huge opportunity for him to show what he can do. Maybe go race in America like he wants. I would not be surprised if an IndyCar team might be talking to him, get everyone by surprise. And World Rally Championship, I think Matt might be better at answering that, but I think potentially a WRC2 seat if he wants to before going to the main level. Shane Van Gisbergen, a lot of potential, and I think it'll be a loss for the Supercar series, but for his career, wherever he goes, I think he'll be competitive.
Yeah, for sure. That was quite an interview that I did not expect to see at all. And I can't think of the person who was interviewing. I think it was Jess Yates. Anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but she asked the question in a way where SVG admitted that his contract runs out at the end of 2024, and then you could see the expression on his face. He was like, "Oh my God, did I just say that?" And now it caused a lot of people to start talking. It really seems like that SVG is ready for a new challenge. I mean, he doesn't have anything else left to prove in Supercars. He's pretty much done everything that you can possibly do. So the only thing you can just do at this point is just continue to stack up race wins and in championships. He's won the great race, the Bathurst 1000. When you have championships, you won Bathurst, all these different great tracks. And Australia, like what else can you do in the Supercar series? So it would not surprise me if he decides that to leave Supercars at the end of 2024 and start 2025 brand new racing in America, whether it's switching to NASCAR, IndyCar. I know it would be fun to see SVG and Scott McLaughlin go up against each other once again in a different racing series, or as you mentioned, Joe, potentially try out World Rally Championship or maybe do some dirt racing here in America. I'm sure a lot of people will be excited to see Shane Van Gisbergen racing against the best on dirt, like a Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson, and looking at what SVG has accomplished in Supercars so far. Right now, he's tied for 8th on the all-time list for drivers' championship, tied with Scott McLaughlin, Craig Lowndes, and Peter Brock. If he gets another one this year, he'll move into a tie for 5th all-time. He's currently 4th on the all-time race wins list in Supercars, only behind Mark Scave, Craig Lowndes, and Jamie Whincup. So there's really not a lot more for SVG to accomplish down under. And Adam Limmery says to you think that the championship is going to come down to SVG and Brody Kostecki, 2 incredible drivers. Totally agree. Hopefully we get a really competitive battle this year in Supercars.
I think it's a shame there were only 2 road courses on the schedule when Marcus Ambrose was here in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think if SVG wanted to, with how many road courses we have nowadays, it could be an opportunity for him to really make some noise if he were to run a full season. But even if he just comes over for a few starts in the Project 91 car, I think it's always great to see some crossover in the world of motorsports, and we'll see what the future holds for SVG. Of course, there are still some heavy rumors out there, but I guess we'll know for sure within the next year or two.
Yeah, for sure. And next, moving on to week 5 of the grid ranking, which will be released on Monday night due to the NASCAR Cup Series race at Dover Motor Speedway being postponed. However, some notable items occurred during the race weekend. Charles Leclerc got in the grid ranking, so that means Lance Stroll is out. Alex Rins and Maverick Vinales from MotoGP are both out, as Pecco Bagnaia and Brad Binder got in. Shane Van Gisbergen is projected to be in 4th place behind Sergio Perez, Brody Kostecki, and Max Verstappen, who is still leading. Joe, what's the weekend's biggest surprise in the grid ranking so far?
I would say the biggest surprise has to be in the Supercar series. Brody Kostecki getting those podium finishes, staying up there to where he's going to be 2nd place in the grid ranking. Max Verstappen, we always anticipate he's going to be in the podium. He did lose some ground though since he didn't get that win, but Brody Kostecki hanging in right there. I think that was a huge win for him. And then the IndyCar series, it's going to be something else as we're starting to see they're trying to lose ground to the other racers as their consistency is still there, but not the wins like many of them had hoped. So grid ranking, still a lot of potential going on. I think what we saw with Brody Kostecki could be a really good sign that he's a real deal in this year's grid ranking.
All right, and now it's time to share our one shining moment. So as always, we encourage everyone watching to comment or share your one shining moment from the weekend. So we'll start with you first, Joe. What is your one shining moment from this race weekend?
My one shining moment, I would say, from this weekend probably has to go over to the reaction we saw from Marcus Armstrong after the race. In case you didn't see, it's on social media. He was given a trophy and he had finished 11th place. And his first response was, "Is this the trophy for like the 10th loser?" And they told him, "No, it's for being the driver that had the most overtakes in the race." He was thrilled. He was caught by surprise. And I think that just shows, especially a rookie racer, a lot of times social media could be hard on them. But their rookie season, they got so much going on. And then when you get a pleasant surprise like that, catches you by surprise, makes your day better. And you could tell he just really, once he heard it was not because he was the 10th loser of the race, it was because of his performance out there on the track. That brought him a smile. That was my one shining moment.
I'm going to stick in IndyCar. I'm going to give it to Romain Grosjean. And I know he didn't get the win, but if he keeps racking up these podiums and 2nd place finishes, he's going to get a win eventually. He looked very, very strong today. Could have managed to push the pass a little bit better, I suppose. But like I said, if he continues to race like this, that win is going to be coming sooner rather than later.
So I'm struggling here because there's a couple. I mean, that's surprising actually considering this weekend. Brad Binder in the sprint for MotoGP was really good. Oliver Bearman in Formula 2 is a high contender. Sergio Perez, double as well. There's been so much good racing this weekend, even though many people have been saying it's boring. First, I've got 2. One is very sweet. It's Megan's 18th birthday today. So happy birthday, Megan. She's not happy I've missed quite a bit of it, but I was there for the main important bits, and I'm spending the whole day with her tomorrow anyway, so that's fine. Bank holiday here in the UK on May Day, because it's the first Monday in May. We also get another one next week because it's the coronation of His Royal Highness King Charles III. Just had to think about that for a second. My main, though, one shining moment, I think I'm going to give it for Oliver Bearman, because unlike Perez, who, yes, he won the sprint and the main Grand Prix, Bearman topped practice, topped qualifying, won the sprint from 9th on the grid and dominated the feature. And I think he's the first driver in Formula 2 to do every single session across the weekend. Drew got the sprint and quali and feature last year, but he did get practice. So Oliver Bearman, 17 years old, mark my words, future F1 champion. And he's a Ferrari Academy driver and he's British. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was quite a weekend for Oliver Bearman. I think I saw on the Formula 2 social media channel, they say the B in Baku stands for Bearman based on how dominant he was this weekend. So really nice to see those young drivers really coming along and developing. My great one shining moment this week is I got to give it to Airbus Motorsport, Brody Kostecki, Will Brown. What an impressive weekend they had. I know we think of Red Bull and Polaris in the Triple Eight operation as the kings of supercars, and nobody can really challenge them. But this weekend, Airbus Motorsport, they're showing us that they are for real. It's quite an insane stat that Brody Kostecki has podiumed in every single race but but one. And if he can keep that consistency going for the remainder of the season, we very well could be talking about a new champion in the Repco Supercars Championship. So as we've been saying, we hope it's going to be a fun battle all year long, so we don't have to pick Shane Van Gisbergen to win every single race. I think I might have to start thinking about Brody Kostecki and some others.
Don't say that, because then my pick a winner is going to be gone for Supercars, and there's going to be millions and millions ahead. He's already leading now. Okay, that's it. Tomorrow is now going to be completely about finding out a new pick a winner for Supercars. Do you know, just when you thought it might get a little bit easier, I'm still living on the fact I was the only one to get pick a winner right last year for Indy 500. And I did that a week in advance. I'm living on that for the rest of my life. I got that right. The most unpredictable race of the year, I called a week before. So, yeah.
That is a massive, massive accomplishment. And I just got my very first IndyCar pick a winner right today. So I think I have to put that as my shining moment of the weekend. Seeing Scott McLaughlin bring it home in first for Team Penske. And I think that Team Penske had a dominant performance all weekend as well with willpower. And Joseph Newgarden just got caught out a little bit with the damage that he had. So I think I'm excited to see what they bring for the month of May. And my one shining moment for today has to go to Scott McLaughlin.
Now, before we close out, you did mention pick a winner, Joshua. I have to show you the updated standings right now. Edward broke the tie by one. He got 2 correct this week. We still have Kobe and Alex tied for second place. Of course, Amanda got another one correct. We do know there's still more pick a winner out there, believe it or not, because the NASCAR Cup Series, they'll be racing tomorrow. So it's not over.
Open? Can I get one? Is it still open?
You can still get one. Yeah, we still got tomorrow's race, so it's still very, very unique circumstance, of course, for everyone. Where NASCAR Cup Series tomorrow, noon Eastern. So that'll mean Grid Encore, Ben, Brandon, they'll be recapping that. Joshua, I believe, will be there for Moto2, Moto3. A lot of racing going on that they're going to be covering. So be sure to subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network so you don't miss us on YouTube. Hit the bell icon. You'll get notified when we go on the air. And, of course, visit our website, gridranking.com. And after visiting our website, seeing about our team, our coverage, our dedication to motorsports, take some time, invest in the Grid Network like Colin, the show, Mark and Robin have done so. We'll be definitely thanking you for investing in each and every month for us, helping us pay the bills, stay on the air, and you can also do Buy Me a Coffee, where through Buy Me a Coffee, you could do a one-time investment. You could even buy coffee for your favorite on-air personality, where because of the work they do, or you agree with their rant of the show. Definitely, we encourage everyone to do that. A couple comments before we sign off. Adam shining moment, Ryan Truex win the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I know Ben's going to be talking about that tomorrow. And Edward Hunter, Josh recovering every single race on the championship. Very busy weekend. And of course, we encourage everyone be sure to visit Joshua Burst's channel and Ben Schneider's channel on YouTube. Link in the video description to both their channels. And definitely check out all the work they do. For Ben, Amanda, Josh, Kobe from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.